One of the most dangerous enemies of heavy armored vehicles in the modern war, as shown by the practice of the special military operation, the war in Ukraine, or the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, whichever term you prefer, has proven to be drones, and it seems like this will be the direction for further tank developments. It will be based specifically on principles of countering this new type of warfare, with weapons that are reliable, cheap, numerous, and deadly, much like the Kalashnikov rifle. The path to counter drones of various kinds and calibers has already been long and thorny. Just consider the appearance on the battle lines of the so-called King of the Grills, or turtle tanks, as Western media calls them. In this video, we'll discuss how else tanks can be protected from drones, and whether these garage-grown turtles or grill kings really have no equals, and are here to stay in modern armies. Enjoy watching, let's go! The current war is unlike any that came before. Everyone confirms this fact. One reason, as I've mentioned, is quite simple. The mass use of drones of all kinds. Surface, underwater, reconnaissance, strike drones, kamikaze drones, and so on. This is the future, which is already the present. However, the biggest contribution to the drone revolution was made by FPV, that is, drones controlled from a first-person view. The abbreviation stands for First Personal View. At one point, this type of drone exactly rescued this special military operation. During the times of shell hunger, FPV practically replaced close-range artillery. However, these toys still can't fly very far due to small batteries, and instead of GPS, they use personal and shorter communication channels, which has also become a pain for fighting against them with the help of electronic warfare. So, the usual range for FPV drones is 5 to 10 kilometers. If we recall Bayraktars and less well-known equivalents, we can conclude that they were larger, expensive machines created at serious defense enterprises. Moreover, they required highly qualified operators. FPVs just completely overturned established rules. Their main difference is the simplicity of creation and use, as well as their extreme affordability, while being maximally accurate and lethal. They are assembled in any relatively lit basement by people who simply need to make a living. They are given the simplest components, often sourced from AliExpress, to piece together a working device from a few parts. By the way, this is one approach being embraced more by the Ukrainian side when they take control. The competitor, on the other hand, seeks to put FPV on a production line and mass-produce them. And it all started, as you remember, with simple civilian drones to which they attached munitions, like a grenade from an underbarrel grenade launcher, and a mechanism to drop it. Then, the drone just had to reach its target, hover above it, and make the drop. By the way, things like barbecues really help. Often, grenades just roll down their sloped surface, but they once helped the armed forces of Ukraine fill a gap in aviation. However, the accuracy of the grenade falling freely left much to be desired. FPV drones have removed this shortcoming. Firstly, the entire control process is from a first-person perspective, as if the pilot is sitting in the copter's cabin, but actually sees the image through special goggles. This greatly enhances the precision and maneuverability of these deadly toys, as they usually attach not just any old thing, but a real anti-tank cumulative grenade, for example from an RPG-7. Such a grenade can penetrate 400 to 500 millimeters of armor, but there's also a fragmentation variant in the lineup, with 850 fragments, covering an area of 150 square meters, add incredible maneuverability and the ability to hit a tank from any projection, rear, side, or under the turret, and it's clear why these toys are truly feared. And if they work as a swarm, attacking the same target, the chances are really few. However, on this backdrop, it's even more surprising that some machines, like this T-90M, having survived the combined attack from 6 FPV drones, still have decent stock protection. Although a bit of luck is surely involved here. What's even sadder is that an FPV drone costs from $200 to $1,000, while a T-90M is $5 million and an Abrams is $10 million. So, economically speaking in war, it's just a find, which, if managed properly, could help resist a much stronger and equipped opponent. This is what largely happens today. However, as you know, the action force is equal to the reaction force. Therefore, even with FPV drones, you can and should fight. How? We'll discuss this further with you. Honestly, when looking at videos and photos of recent innovations designed to protect tanks from UAVs, you can't help but recall the self-propelled armored boxes of World War I. And you realize that in 110 years, everything has somehow come full circle. A shed or garage type armor turned out to be quite effective, but it has its downsides. Firstly, it severely limits both the view and the use of the tank's cannon. All other protective systems suffer too. But as they say, in a pinch, if needed, even frogs will start snapping their claws. However, it seems Mangals have a serious competitor. I'm talking about electronic warfare systems that tanks on the front are increasingly equipped with. Of course, it all started with improvisation, like this T-72B3, which has a ton of EW equipment installed, looking like a Frankenstein Christmas tree, but it still performs the function of neutralizing FPV over the battlefield. In the last photo, you can even see the generator that powers all this additional equipment. The question remains how this will withstand bullets and shrapnel. It begs for a more compact, yet equally effective solution. Simply put, a factory-made one, and there already is one. Remember our video on the T-80 BVM, updated in 2023, which from the factory already has a mangal and comes with a small mobile jamming complex, Volno-Res. It's such a not very big cone that's mounted on armor with a strong magnet at the base. The principle of operation is simple. It sets up jamming at one specific frequency, but nothing stops the installation of multiple devices on armor. Tuned to different frequencies, the concept itself is far from new. Back in the 80s and 90s, the unseen electronic warfare account was started, and today, this branch of the military-industrial complex has suffered far less than, say, engine building. So it's not surprising that the Soviet-Russian EW school is the best in the world. And the closest competitors in the forests of the USA or Israel are still just trying to catch up, and they generally admit it themselves. Even during the Soviet era, Soviet electronic warfare troops were equipped with small jamming devices. Working with them was quite unique. A diversionary group had to secretly place some devices around, say, a division headquarters 1 to 2 kilometers away from it. Through radio signals, these devices would turn on and turn the airwaves into real chaos. Yes, the batteries back then lasted for 1 to 2 hours of operation, and those boxes could be easily found using regular direction finders. But in a real battle situation, it could actually work, leaving the enemy forces without centralized command for an hour. Who knows what could happen in a critical situation in a war within an hour, right? In general, such complexes were already in the troops by the end of the USSR, but they never got a chance to be used anywhere. Volno-Res works on roughly the same principle. Of course, it has a different element base, different antennas. Everything is more modern than it was more than 30 years ago. And today, it already helps protect tank crews from the effects of drones. The peculiarity of Volnores is the absence of the usual rod antennas. That's not the best solution for equipment moving through forested areas. Those can easily catch onto a tree, plus a hail of bullets or shrapnel can cause damage. Volnores, however, has a unique flat shape like a flying saucer. On one hand, this provides increased durability, as the cover protecting the body of this electronic warfare system is armored and attached to the base with several bolts. On the other hand, this base is quite large and allows for a powerful magnet to be installed at the base, which is quite reasonable. Fastening by conventional screw nut methods is not very suitable for a tank. It takes a lot of time and creates gaps in the armor. But a magnet is a different story. You can quickly stick it on and quickly remove it if needed. Of course, it needs to be very powerful, so it doesn't come off during movement or combat, but there's no risk of it getting skewed or jammed. By the way, the shockproof cover essentially serves as an all-directional antenna. Up to 8 of these flying saucers can be installed on a tank. Each one weighs 13 kilograms, has a diameter of 38.5 centimeters without handles, a height of just over 20, and the system's emission power is 30 watts. The complex can operate in a temperature range from -40 to +60 degrees Celsius. The power source is a battery or the tank's onboard network. They are connected into a single system using a distribution box to which a control panel and a power source are connected. The developers have taken care and set up a total of 18 different operating frequency ranges, but for one machine, as we remember, you can install only up to 8 devices. Each will work on its own frequency. If you have the means, you could even equip all 18 devices. But the designers decided that 8 is enough to cover the frequency ranges in which enemy drones operate. 18 is, you could say, looking to the future. In general, the entire range covers from 300 to 6000 MHz. Moving on. The effective suppression range is up to 600,000 meters, depending on the terrain obstacles. In the event of a drone being detected, the jammer automatically creates a radio interference dome. It suppresses the control radio signal or jams the video signal. In both cases, the drone loses connection with the operator and falls to the ground. But I want to say that the jammer is not unique, although perhaps it turned out to be the most successful for tanks. Nevertheless, 2 other systems are also widespread, Triton and Sanya. Triton includes an antenna and 4 emitters at the angles of the tank turret's canopy. This ensures protection from all 4 directions. The emitters block 4 main frequency ranges. Currently, these are 868, 915, 1300 and 2400 MHz. The system's configuration can be quickly changed by adding suppression modules for new frequencies. Control is also possible from a remote console. During operation, Triton creates an interference dome around the carrier, suppressing drone control channels within a radius of at least several hundred meters. The system discussed, which people started talking about in January 2024, is a bit more complicated. Its main module is a container case with a set of external antennas. The work is done in automatic mode without operator intervention. A feature is that this multi-range system incorporates a radio intelligence module. Its detector scans the area for FPV at distances up to 1.5 kilometers. It then determines the frequency the drone is controlled on and selects the optimal interference for its suppression, which is already carried out at distances up to 1 kilometer. It won't interfere with its own drones operating on other frequencies. It seems all cool, but there is a significant downside. For the tank jammer to be effective, it shouldn't be broken. It's important to know exactly which frequencies the enemy drones are operating on. No matter how good the latest one is, the first one will eventually hit its target anyway. FPV creators will always be one step ahead of Ribu developers, since they only react to the conditions set by drone operators. Moreover, Ribu has its limitations. For example, it must interfere with the opponent's FPV drones, but not affect our own. Therefore, electronic warfare is not a cure-all. especially since it's more of a group rather than an individual defense method. Yes, the same Volinirets has proven its effectiveness not only in field tests, but also in combat, demonstrating its viability. But it would not hurt to enhance it with something else, preferably simple, mobile, and more individualized, like a last resort weapon. Initially, as I've already mentioned, a cautious approach was decided to minimize losses. Tanks also served as infantry support, but they did so from a distance. This also included long-range fire from concealed positions. This has become widespread, and with drone adjustments, they have reached reasonably acceptable accuracy, at least as much as a tank barrel allows. But it couldn't go on like this forever. During the ongoing conflict and frequent strikes on critical infrastructures by drones, many types of weapons, considered obsolete, have come back to life. This happened, for instance, with anti-aircraft artillery. Shilkas and Gepards have literally found a second life. Simple soldiers often shoot down FPV drones with small arms. However, for effective performance, it too needs specific approaches. It turned out that the 4-barrel GSHG 762 machine gun, long out of production, performs well as standard anti-drone weaponry due to its extremely high rate of fire. It was adopted in 1979 and mounted on helicopters. Slightly later, in 2018, a robotic fire complex called Berserk was created in Belarus using 2 of these. The machine gun itself was equipped with an electric drive block and mounted on a chassis with a hybrid power unit, where a petrol engine simply charged the battery. This rock ended up weighing just over 2 tons. So, it's suggested to mount such a system on a tank turret as well. The thing is, the speed of FPV is relatively low, giving some extra time to fire at them. The initial detection and target data, i.e., bearing and approximate range, can be provided by the tank's active protection system. Next is the rotation of the system for targeting and firing. But all this requires the creation of a tracking and automatic aiming system for the machine gun to shoot down such small targets. The task isn't easy, but it's doable. So, maybe in the future, we'll see similar systems with quad-barreled machine guns mounted on armored vehicles. Work on them is already actively underway. In the early days of April 2024, a system developed by the Lobaev Foundation was demonstrated, intended for combating UAVs. It features a turret with electric drives and an attached weapon module. For instance, in this case, it's a smoothbore 12-gauge shotgun with an increased capacity drum-type magazine, although there's a rifled version too. They're also considering the possibility and feasibility of creating a system with both rifled and smoothbore modules simultaneously. Such a setup is called a remotely operated weapon module, abbreviated DUMV. They're also intended to be mounted on various types of combat vehicles. Practically anything can serve as the weapon module in such a DUMV. Assault rifles with extended magazines, light machine guns, automatic grenade launchers on tripods, handheld anti-tank grenade launchers, flamethrowers, and much more. Basically, anything storage depots have to offer. However, given the need to specifically combat FPV drones, the Saiga carbine in the 30th version and the smoothbore self-loading Viper Molot shotgun have gained popularity. Both are developed on the basis of the Kalashnikov light machine gun design, thanks to its high rate of fire. Such anti-drone turrets can be placed either separately, on mobile tracked or wheeled platforms like the Berserk, or directly installed on military vehicles, drawing power from their onboard networks. For example, 2 such anti-drone turrets could be installed above the turret, while operators controlling them via radio might be placed in the troop compartment, following a tank with a combat vehicle at some distance. This way, the vehicle will have several layers of protection at once. The majority of drones will be taken down by the rape system. The rest will be handled by DUMF or ROC operators, and if any do slip through, the hope lies in the turret, armor, or dynamic protection. Nonetheless, once the enemy's supply of FPV drones is depleted, the tank can relatively calmly, systematically, and precisely take down strongholds using its powerful 125mm cannon. However, just like the scrap cutter, there's an issue. A shortage of 12-gauge rifles in the troops. That's why such makeshift under-barrel shotguns and even separate rifles assembled literally from a metal chair and a piece of pipe are surfacing online. Classic Russian ingenuity on full display. The military-industrial complex is adapting to the challenges of the times, and new tanks are already coming straight off the production lines with standard turrets. Unlike Western technology, which was much less prepared for the modern realities. Take the Abrams tanks, which Kyiv kept away from the front lines for a while at the behest of the USA. But then they went to cool down the fire near Avdiivka, where they became easy prey for FPV, just like all the others. For some reason, NATO technology doesn't seem to want to evolve. Grills on Abrams or Leopard tanks are more of an exception than the rule, but I dare to suggest that it's not due to lack of ingenuity, but perhaps more about maintaining a brand, as putting a grill on the Abrams is a clear sign of vulnerability. However, albeit late, the realities of the modern battlefield are catching up with them too. We will leave this topic for the experts in the comments. As I mentioned before, tanks come equipped with grills right from the factory, which naturally should include the most effective solutions from the front lines. Thus, Western observers are curious about the zigzagged box-like structures made from corrugated panels on top of the protective structure. They believe, and it seems quite justified, that this is an optimal solution against grenades launched from drones, comparing this concept to the affordable MRAP vehicles. They mean armored vehicles with enhanced mine protection, featuring technology on a V-shaped hull from the side of the underbody. This profile helps to deflect the force of explosions to the sides, so this is the optimal shape for deflecting falling munitions. Garage geniuses are also striving to extract maximum functionality from existing available solutions. The front line is buzzing with the trend of creating mega grills, along with powerful rep, like this one on a T-62M. There's a diesel generator to power all these gadgets, which isn't connected to the tank's main power system due to complexity or insufficiency of the native system. Additionally, you can spot Contact 1 blocks on the protective grids on the hull. Recently, a video appeared on Ukrainian platform showing a captured T-62M. As noted by the host, this tank was used as a frontline taxi for moving personnel under its homemade dome. The gun was sealed, the turret wouldn't turn, and there was no ammunition storage at all. In essence, it's a homemade armored vehicle with FPV protection, which proved its efficiency. Still, this vehicle wasn't lucky. But the mega grills are not alone. Another trend this season is protective logs. The internet is full of videos of self-propelled artillery installations looking like log cabins on caterpillars. This type of armor has even been given the codename Zarhut. If we go back to simple canopies, often the gaps between them and the turret are covered with anti-cumulative meshes, sliding around the perimeter of the grill, similar to those that cover the turret's ring. This is done to protect this area from particularly skilled FPV operators. The principle of operation is based on the destructive impact of metallic elements at thread intersections on the thin body of the attacking munition. Also, a first-person view drone might just get stuck in it like a fish in nets, or could cause a premature detonation. This solution also came from the battlefield. Take, for example, this elegant T-72B3 with massive chains covering all weak spots. Generally, a weak point of any modern tank is the differential armor. The tank is most protected at the front of the turret and the hull, which allows it to safely operate in the so-called coarse angles of fire, where most threat agents are withstood. But unfortunately, such a level of protection cannot be ensured from all sides. The weight would shoot up into space, mobility would approach zero, and transportation would become an insurmountable task. Methods of active protection come to the rescue. Firstly, there are explosive reactive armor modules, the old reliable boxes with explosives inside and metal plates outside. These plates, when activated, shoot towards the attacking projectile, breaking its tip or deflecting it, or focusing the cumulative jet on themselves, taking away most of its energy. Nowadays, such elements are densely covering tanks, especially in weak areas like the lower glacis plate, the side skirts, the roof, the gun mantle, the rear of the hull or turret. A couple of words should also be said about active protection systems. The benefits of APS are also indisputable. Even the not-so-perfect arena can significantly reduce the likelihood of defeat and the loss of the vehicle as a whole. Not to mention the more advanced DROS 2, which after improvements became Afghanit, installed on Armata. Yes, it's costly and difficult to produce, but in the foreseeable future, it will be hard to imagine a tank without such a system. Simply put, it is an intelligent air defense for the tank, detecting and neutralizing enemy shells with its counter-munitions. But there is a catch. They turned out to be useless against low-speed targets like FPV drones or falling munitions. Even the super-modern upgraded Israeli Trophy, which the Americans install on their Abrams tanks, confirmed this. APS just were not trained to respond to drones flying slower than anti-tank guided missiles. And this was quite a reasonable decision since it decreased the frequency of false alarms. But now developers definitely need to make adjustments to the APS, particularly teaching it to work in integration with the GSHG machine gun, which I mentioned earlier. By the way, the US Army is also testing its mobile lasers against UAVs. These complexes are called DM-SHOT, which stands for Maneuver Short Range Air Defense System with Directed Energy. The laser turret with a power of 50 kilowatts was supposed to replace active protection systems by also shooting down missiles, shells, or mortar rounds. The Americans don't really talk much about how this thing handles targets, but it's known that it doesn't do too well with climatic conditions. Since the test took place in the Middle East, the efficient work of the laser was constantly hindered by airborne dust, causing the beam to defocus and not hit enough energy on the target to destroy it. Additionally, the laser power level of 50 kilowatts proved too high for a mobile setup, so when they tried to put it on a Stryker armored personnel carrier, it turned out that the light turret suffered from overheating, which further led to failures in its electronics. Nevertheless, the Pentagon continues to work on mobile and stationary laser systems. Barbecues in the future might also undergo significant changes. Just take a look at this interesting patent for a next-generation canopy. It has an electric motor and a propeller with sharp knife-like blades, creating a sort of protective dome over the vehicle.
At first glance, the design might seem laughable, but it is actually quite effective. The blades physically eliminate threats. However, the crew should be careful when leaving the vehicle to avoid any decapitation or other accidents. And finally, one shouldn't forget about camouflage. These are systems for setting up aerosol screens, working both in tandem with laser detection sensors like a curtain, and with complexes for detecting ultraviolet emissions from rocket engines. Successfully implemented on the Armata. Don't forget about the cloak set, which makes the carrier vehicle completely invisible, both visually and in the infrared and radar ranges. There are also engineering efforts, like reducing exhaust visibility, developing paint compositions, creating new camouflage color schemes, and so on. Plus, in-field camouflage, networks, and tree branches, etc. All of these collectively yield quite tangible results. Engineering ideas are endless, and more countermeasures against new types of Wunderwaffe will keep appearing. I haven't even mentioned drone catching cartridges that spread a net in the air when fired, trapping the drone. However, this is also a weapon of last resort. Plus, it's very painstaking to make, handcrafted and mostly by women, so it's unlikely to become a mass solution. But it's already clear that the Ukrainian crisis is changing a lot in the world's classic armies and even more in technology. We are witnessing a new leap in the development of the armed forces, which has come as a response to the large-scale deployment of UAVs. Obviously, many new innovations are just in the early stages of their development, but war accelerates their development and application. Whoever first tests new approaches and developments will win this game. It is very harsh and sad, and it's worth noting. I will strive to keep you in the loop, so subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. And see you soon in new videos.